Hey everybody, welcome to the TrailBlazers podcast. We're your hosts, Tyler and Dave.
So we're here to help break down the critical decisions, personal developments, and key factors that help get our guests to where they are today and contribute to where they will be in the future.
Today on the podcast, we had Kate, who's a mechanical engineering graduate and now currently working at Alto Sante as a data scientist. Kate shared a bunch of wisdom with us about how she got her job, using informational interviews, some of the adversities she faced along the way, and some of the skills she had to gain into becoming a data scientist. Hope you guys enjoy.
We're super happy to have you on. Yeah, we're super to have you on. So maybe you can start us off by just giving us an overview of what you're doing now, what your day-to-day looks like, and then, just kind of a 30,000-foot view of how you got here. And then we'll dive into some more detailed questions after that.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, I'm still in Alberta, so not nearly as cool as you guys, but that's okay.
No. Me and Dave always talk about how much we want to come back to Alberta, though, so don't be too.
We do, and I mean, I'm physically here right now. It feels great. I'm looking down at a lake right in front of me. Alberta, yeah.
I'm looking over the Stampede ground, so it's like a little gross, but that's okay.
Did you Stampede? Sorry, I got a sidetrack.
I went to my work Stampede party, but there's only like 13 people that work there, so it was just fun.
Okay.
Hey,
that's good.
Yeah.
13 is better than a group of two. So, but
Exactly.
Sorry, Kate, please continue.
Day to day, that's a really good question. So I started at this startup. It was a really unique, really amazing opportunity where I ended up, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Still don't really know what I want to do. But they had like all these different things I was interested in. And I found this startup through networking that like literally checked all of the boxes. So just an unbelievable opportunity. So right now, basically I get to do whatever I'm interested in. So currently I just started 2 months ago, so I'm quite new. I am a data scientist there, but I'm learning how to be a data scientist. So I'm working with another guy who's just finishing his master's in data science. So I haven't done any of my own specific projects, but I will be eventually, but I have been helping him with a lot of AI work, kind of some basic health AI stuff. And then I'm also doing kind of some management consulting like things. So the company that I work for, it's very confusing, is kind of a management consultant. It's a venture studio. So they provide both management consulting and technical consulting for startups to basically get it from an idea to a product and try to guide them in that space. And that's all within digital health technology. So basically working with, they're generally doctors. So they're obviously very smart, have a really good idea, but they don't really know how to get that idea off the ground, which is super cool because then I get to do some of the technical stuff, dive into it, figure out what they need and how we can help, do a little bit of development work, not a ton, because we do kind of offload that, but get enough of like the basics so that we can offload it for cheap. And then, do the technical, like the data science side of that as well when they need it. And then the management, I'm learning the management side of it, figuring out how the health economy works here in Alberta. We're moving over into BC within the next couple of weeks as well, which is super interesting. So day to day, I don't know, people ask me what I do. I solve problems when I can. Right now I'm working a lot on management reports, which is figuring out how to get the data to where I need and then present it to the CEO and the CTO and all of the C-suite, which is basically the whole company, in a way that makes sense. So like how we're doing and how we can figure out how we're doing, as well as how we can show it and how we can see it and where we need to work on, if that makes sense.
For sure. And like, there's so many things that I want to touch on and ask you about just in kind of even that introduction to. I think it's really cool that probably, you're graduating out of school and you're now within a startup space and you're kind of trying to see, how all these things work. You say, the startup's a little bit like a management consultancy and it's also technical. So you kind of get to go both sides. Maybe from just the beginning, I'm curious, because I'm sure a lot of young professionals are kind of trying to figure out, how do we identify the opportunities that kind of fit for us? So would you mind maybe touching a little bit on how your job search worked? And also, how did you know that this was going to be like a good fit for you going forward?
Great question. So I graduated in January, which was like peak COVID time, which wasn't great. And I was really, really afraid of networking. Like I was like, this isn't what I want to do. It's so sleazy. I couldn't even fathom it. So I was just like looking on LinkedIn, like spending all day sending out resumes, which isn't the greatest. But I was really trying to focus on what I really liked through my master's, because I did love I loved all of it. But I knew I don't really want to be a professor, so I didn't really want to go too much further. And through that whole process, really focused on what I was enjoying the most. And what it came down to is I worked a lot with clinicians, as well as with dentists, as well as with engineers, and then just like straight researchers. So through my whole process, I had to figure out what I was doing, and then I had to convince everybody that what I was doing made sense in a way that they could understand, which was a unique challenge, and I loved it. And then also on top of that, figure out how to get them to give me advice on if it was going to work or what I should change. So I used a lot of data visualization, and I used a lot of presentation skills and a lot of question asking. And I loved all of those aspects. And so from there, I Googled data visualization, found out that that's an industry. Nobody told me this. And then I found out that data science was a thing. Again, nobody told me this. And so I was really interested in that. So I spent a ton of time doing some online courses just to try to learn some different coding skills. They teach us MATLAB in school, which is like the least helpful thing ever. So trying to learn some other skills, trying to learn some more AI, some more machine learning stuff. And then finally my mom stepped in and she was like, okay, you need to network. Like this isn't working. So I was introduced to a lady who basically taught me how to do some informational interviews, and was like, I'll introduce you to this one person. And then from there, ask who he knows and kind of expand from there. And then I felt a little bit better about it. She told me, like, you're not asking for a job. You're asking about what they do, how they got there, if they know people, if they can tell you some things to learn and that kind of thing. And so then I was like, oh, actually, that sounds kind of cool. So I was off to the races, started basically full-time informational interviews. And it was so interesting. I met so many amazing people that were just a few years ahead of me. And they also all had quite unique backgrounds, and they were all it was mostly marketing analysts and stuff like that, but similar ideas. And I met some really amazing people and a lot of really amazing women in the space, which was super amazing because they all have super creative and a super technical background, which is kind of unique. I have that as well, and I just love that. And so I really resonated with them. And then I met the founder of the company I'm working for now. And I liked his energy. I really resonated with him. He was really honest. He was like, yeah, didn't like the oil industry. He actually started as a mechanical engineer, then turned to a software engineer, has run a couple successful startups, and then has just started this one. And he was like, we have this opportunity. We would love to teach you how to be a data scientist. We would love to teach you how to do this. And so we would love to offer you this job. And part of the job, which is super cool, is I get 8 hours a week of just training. So whether that's with people at the company or just kind of on my own, like learning online. And so it's just a super unique opportunity. And I just went for it. I thought this is worth the risk. And also it was in the health space, which I was really interested in as well. So yeah, I had the data scientists, the health stuff, the people I really enjoyed right off the bat. And it was a startup, which I was interested in. I did some work at Imperial, and it wasn't for me. So does that answer your question? I kind of got sidetracked. I get really excited about networking.
That was really good. That was good. I'm kind of curious also about, because you mentioned it in your answer just now, but also when I was creeping your LinkedIn, because we do our homework on this podcast, that, I kind of realized that the data science and the collecting and organizing data, like you said, crept more and more into your career as you went along. First, you had that co-op position in oil and gas, and you had to build all the macros for the Excel sheets. And then it looks like it really came into play in your master's research as well. And now you decided to make that kind of the primary thing for your career. It seems like it was more of a, like you were mentioning, like a secondary thing as a way to present information. At what point did kind of that flip happen, and that, it seems like you were never really pursuing data science from the start. At what point did you decide, like, okay, I actually like this aspect more than everything else, and I want to pursue a career in this? Because it seems like you were pursuing something else beforehand. Like, how did you kind of leave that over there and say, I want to go into data science?
I want to change. That's a good question, because it was a really slow burn. So I, like, again, always trying to figure out what I like. So from mechanical, I went into a biomechanical master's because that was what I was super interested in, still is. And then COVID happened. And so that obviously changed everybody's lives. And so I was kicked out of the lab. And so I had a lot of data, but we needed to figure out what to do with that data. And so I had the opportunity to spend a lot more time with it, and then kind of really started growing from there, which was super lucky, just all around that I was forced to do that, I guess. And then also one of the people that I worked with, both of us didn't really understand machine learning. I thought it was just the scariest thing ever because I couldn't wrap my head around it. And then somebody she knew is a big machine learning person and taught us something. And so we implemented that through our thesi, whatever the plural of thesis is. And so then that was kind of like my introduction. Yeah, right. Theses. That I implemented that into my data analysis and then learned more from that. Are you Googling it? The thesis plural?
I'm sorry, I'll just give us a quick fact check.
Yeah. And so that was when I learned machine learning and learned that it was possible. And then pretty much as soon as I graduated and started job searching, and I found data analysis and data science and data visualization was when I decided to pursue it. Like reading through job descriptions for mechanical engineer positions, like honestly gave me a stomach ache. I was like, I don't want to do this. And so it was, as soon as that happened, then I switched into the data science world, data science, data analyst, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes, I think, even just thinking and hearing about your kind of transition, Kate, it seems really similar to mine. I would love to say that it was like an overnight thing where I was just, kind of like I had mentioned earlier that, I wanted to go into machine learning, but it was really this gradual process of kind of like figuring out the bits and pieces that sort of like interest you. And as well, you kind of need along the way in order to transition to, this like new career, this new thing that we're doing as time progresses. One thing I'm kind of curious on too, we kind of touched a little bit about, say, the internships you had beforehand, and then also, going into the masters, and now you're in the health tech space within the startup industry. Was the decision to go into a master's straight out of school kind of a conscious decision for you, or was it something that you kind of were thinking, okay, if I do the master's now, then I'll probably be able to highlight some additional things that I'm interested in to then sort of direct yourself to an opportunity afterwards?
I think kind of. So I got my master's from my final capstone project. So I chose the capstone project because I was interested in, it was injury biomechanics. I forced my group to do that. And then from there, I met my supervisors. And at that time, I was just kind of finding out about biomechanics. And so I was asking them lots of questions, like how they got to where they were and what they suggest. And my main supervisor said, really, if you want to work in the biomechanics space, you need a master's degree. And then he said, also, we're looking for a master's student if you're interested. And I really resonated with that. And then I went for a coffee with him. And one of the things he said was, when he was choosing to go into his master's, was he just wasn't quite done with school yet. And I was like, I don't think I'm quite done with school yet either. That checks out, and I'm interested in this. And I really respected him and liked him, both of my supervisors. And the project was super interesting. And I thought it would advance where I was going. It did, but in a different direction. So that one was a conscious decision. That one, I was like, yes, I want to do this to go into biomechanics, which didn't pan out, but that's okay.
Right on. Well, no, it seems like it was a really good decision.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm wondering, while you're at the U of A, you also collaborated with a lot of volunteer groups and volunteer activities, and this is really difficult to do while you're getting a degree and while you're taking a master's degree. We all know there's not a lot of free time to do this. So, it's sometimes it's hard to justify spending that time, but, I think for anybody that's done it, we know that it's well worth it in the end. So I'm kind of curious, what are some of the benefits that you experienced from these collaborations you did or the volunteering activity you did while you were in university getting your degree?
Yeah, so I volunteered. I also, probably not on my LinkedIn, was trained to become a workout instructor. So there was 3 main activities. So I was doing my master's, and I was also taking on extra projects in my master's. So I ended up doing two when you're supposed to do one. I only wrote one thesis though. And then I was volunteering. Most of those volunteer positions were teaching. I really like teaching and tutoring and that kind of thing. And then teaching the workout classes as well. So the workout classes I did because I wanted to branch out of engineering. I only knew engineers, and I was like, maybe I should start something else. And it was a unique opportunity to practice public speaking, I was a dancer. So to bring my dance background back into it and to be, to have an outlet, like there was a certain amount of yoga to it. And so it was really stress relieving as well. So that helped when I was really busy in my master's. And then I was volunteering as well, which I loved. It was about 2 hours a week. And I was working with some adult learners, and I really, I was in a position when I started that I felt really lucky and really gracious, and like I wanted to be able to share. And I wanted to be able to like donate, and I was a master's student, so I didn't have any money to donate. So I thought, like, why don't I donate my time? And so I did, and I think I did it for about 1.5 years, 2 hours a week. Maybe it was closer to a year. And I met some really interesting adult learners. And so we worked towards their GED, teaching them math, which selfishly was really good for my basic math skills. I learned a lot more about, like we were learning like multiplication and stuff like that. So I really brushed up on those skills. And I also volunteered doing WISEST through the WISEST program, which is a Women in Engineering and Sciences program. And that I really wanted to learn a lot more about mentorship. I know that's a big part of being an engineer in general. And so I wanted to strengthen those skills as well as foster women in engineering. It's always exciting. And I just thought it would be a really interesting opportunity. It was something that I wished I did when I was in high school, but I didn't know about it. So I thought maybe I'll jump in now. As for balancing the time, I don't know. I honestly don't know how I did it. I was really busy all the time. I just do better when I'm busy, I guess. And so I just went for it. But then COVID hit, and now I don't know how I possibly did that. And I'm like, I can't go out. I went out 3 days ago. Sorry. I have to stay in bed.
Yeah, I feel like, kind of, I mean, I'm just going to touch on sort of like the busy side of things, because I think, Kate, like really similar to you, during my master's, I was trying to do like everything. And, I just want to say, thank you as well to kind of like your contribution to say like on the volunteering side with like adult learners, WISEST as well. I think they're all really good initiatives. And like, even for myself, I know during my master's, like I started 2 different student groups, plus I was doing Toastmasters and like trying to like get a thesis done. And like, I did a study abroad, and like I did an internship in the US, like all these things. And I think now, touching on like what you're saying, I can like barely manage like holding like a full-time job, learning Chinese, and like, spending some time with like my family and friends now. I'm like, how did I do this? But okay, so touching on I actually am kind of curious, because I know like basically the career that you're getting into, data science, like it does require like a good amount of learning and upskilling. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, through the experiences that you had, say with teaching like the adult learners, and as well like say like mentoring the like the girls and the students like within WISEST, were you able to like identify to some extent like good learning attributes that like helped you like in your learning journey? Like was there some kind of like correlation you can kind of see between spending the time with other students and then like impacting your own learning abilities as well?
So with the adult learners, it was very challenging because that math has always come easily to me. I assume you guys as well. And this was like straight up multiplication, division, and they couldn't get it. And it was just honestly the most frustrating experience of my life. And so for that, I learned a lot of really weird things about numbers and multiplication that you wouldn't learn unless you spend a year trying to teach multiplication to somebody. But I don't really think that helped with my learning. That was more just like a nerdy number situation. But mentoring with the high school student was a lot different. I learned a lot more about how much of an independent learner I had become since high school. Because that I think is a little bit, they throw you into it when you go into university. But they also, like, you just become such a different learner and you don't really realize it. And so kind of going back to that, and every day she'd be like, okay, what am I working on today? And I was like, well, just do what I told you to do yesterday. Just keep going. Which I had to learn quickly that she required a little bit more management than that, which is totally fine because she hadn't learned it yet. And so I think it helped me a lot with how to manage and how to be a leader, and how to identify that what I know and my knowledge base is so different than other people. Not that I know more, because I don't, but I just know something different. And so you have to figure that out, step away, and then be like, okay, what can I learn from you, and what can I get from you, and what can I teach you, so that we can both grow from this experience. So I learned that a lot from mentoring the high school students, for sure.
That's great. I just want to follow up on that, because I think that this is a really important topic that it's not intentional enough, I think, when we're in university as well as afterwards. Is that it seems like you've done a lot of mentoring, you've volunteered a lot of your time. But earlier you were mentioning that you were fortunate enough to spend some time with some women that were both creative and technical, and you felt that was like yourself. So I'm just wondering, have you had some mentors that you've drawn a lot from, that you feel like, whether it be intentional or unintentional? Because I know I've had a lot of mentors in my life, but it's all been unintentional. It's just been close relationships, and I realized after the fact, I'm like, wow, I learned a lot from that person. They mentored me. Is this something you've been intentional about, and kind of what are the benefits you've experienced, if so?
It's not. It's something that I'm trying to be more intentional about now. I actually just met somebody last week who I really resonated with. She's just such an amazing energy, and the same kind of thing. She's an engineer, just kind of trying to follow what made her happy, instead of, she said she was sitting in an office and looking out the window and was like, wow, I have to do this for 30 more years. And this isn't it. I need to kind of take control of my life. And so it was just an amazing conversation, but that was just last week. But since graduating, they always try to get you to get a mentor when you're in the co-op program and when you're in the places that you're at. And they're like, you need a mentor, but they don't really give you enough about that. I don't think. I think they need to teach more. Okay, here, we're going to give you a mentor, or here are some options for a mentor, and they're going to help guide you through, because you need to figure out how to foster that relationship. And I haven't been able to figure that out, like a actual mentor. But there are so many people in my life that I really look up to. I have a lot of really strong women in my family. And I've never had an issue being a woman in a male's world. Partially that's because I'm very lucky, and partially that's just because it doesn't faze me. I don't know. And so I would attribute that to my grandparents and my parents, just always just letting me do whatever I want to do and going for it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, and it's definitely good to have a supportive ecosystem no matter what you're doing, because Tyler and I, we know as well, and with our friends, anybody who's going through changes, especially through say careers, or even having a mentor support you, it's always good to kind of have that backbone of being able to kind of see what are the changes that I'm going through, and having somebody that's maybe a bit more senior who's weathered that storm before, to kind of be hey, you're going to be okay, and you'll be able to progress going forward. And you know what, I think, while still on the topic of mentorship, and maybe say us kind of giving some dialogue for people who are still in school right now, what do you think, Kate, for say some students who are going through school right now, who are still trying to kind of figure out the why, or the purpose of where they want to go after school, and kind of how did you sort of see this process for yourself, and identifying that throughout your educational journey?
I honestly never knew what I wanted to do, or what I was going to do going through school, which is not, I don't think you're supposed to do that. But what I have always done and tried to do, and have become more intentional about as I progressed through school, was whenever anybody said anything to me that I really resonated with, or really liked, or kind of provoked a thought, I'd write it down, and I would try to follow that, which is kind of manifesty, but not, I'm not good at practicing that. I should be better at it. But I really, really just try to think about where I'm at right now, what is making me happy and what is making me not happy. And how can I keep going with what's making me happy, and not necessarily get rid of, not everything's always going to be good. But how can you either make everything else better, or how can you get some new relationships? How can you turn that into a more positive situation? I think I started trying to do that in high school. I was, here, actually, I do have a mentor. I was, had in the a negative space in high school, and it wasn't I wasn't really who I wanted to be. And then I saw an old babysitter, and she was just like the most positive person and had such an amazing energy and such an amazing light. And like, you just knew that everybody wanted to be around her. And I was like, that's who I want to be. That's where I want to be. And I think that was like grade 11. And ever since then, I've been really trying to be more intentional about what I'm giving out and how I got there. And so with my personality, with my school, with the decisions that I make, with the jobs that I've taken, and the decision to do my master's, and those similar thing, like I met my supervisor and he said that I'm not done with school yet. And I was like, oh yeah. So just like really trying to be okay to learn from others, and really okay to reflect, and really be okay to like change, I guess.
That's good. That's really good. Yeah. And I like the part about really like listening to others, because a lot of times they'll have that different perspective and tell you things that are kind of maybe right in front of your face, but you can't really see it.
Yeah, exactly.
I've had that realization once or twice as well. So I think that's really good advice. Just so kind of in a similar vein, I think that, we've talked a lot about like, finding your why, doing lots of extracurricular activities, and kind of trying to shape your career path. But there's definitely students out there where, not all that is secondary, because they're kind of just trying to survive their course load in their classes and
Absolutely.
stuff like that, and incurring a lot of adversity. I think, all of us have been there. Me and Dave have definitely said before, we've been part of the not high grades club, and definitely rode the academic roller coaster up and down. And it's hard when you're in that position to think like, oh, I can shape whatever career I want. I have all these options. It feels like I just want to get to the next semester kind of. So I'm curious, because it seems like you're really in a position that you want to be in now with data science. Mm-hmm. But were there times along the way where you faced that adversity in university? And what advice would you give to students that are kind of going through some ups and downs and some challenging times while they're trying to get the degree, especially in the current conditions with COVID and all the telelearning, where we know everything is just 10 times harder because we're not in the common areas with everybody learning together and stuff like that. So, what's been your experience with some academic adversity, and what would you tell people listening that are going through the same thing right now?
Yeah. So my undergrad, I didn't do any volunteering. I didn't do any extracurriculars or anything. Like I couldn't even, like you can't, well, you can. I know people do. I couldn't. It just wasn't where I was, which is why when I got into my master's, I was a little bit more like, okay, I want to do this, and carved out time for it, because you have a little bit more flexibility. But like through your undergraduate degree, yeah, you do feel quite lost. And I didn't really know what I was going to do until like the last semester of my 5th year. Like it wasn't obvious to me. And yeah, so same, just like trying to talk to people and ask them questions. I was talking to somebody the other day that said people don't really ask questions anymore. They're too afraid. And so there's just always like not being afraid to ask questions. And that's another thing in engineering. I don't think they don't teach you that it's okay to not know something. And so like just the whole vibe of engineering is like, you're the best kind of thing. And I don't think that is an attitude that you should travel through your life with. And when I learned that, it opened up so many doors. Like when you're like, okay, I can ask this question. It's okay not to know. It's okay to learn. You don't need to be the smartest person in the room, because you're probably not. That's totally okay. And I think that will help you be able to grow and continue and improve. And if somebody, there's no stupid questions kind of thing, just do what you can. As for the adversity, I was super lucky with COVID. I was not taking any more classes. I was supposed to be TAing a class, but then I didn't have to TA that class anymore. So worked out. And I did have to change, I had to significantly change what my focus of my thesis was on, which was really challenging for me because I liked the experimental side of it a lot more. And I had to shift to a lot more of the data analysis, and specifically a lot more simulations, which wasn't my strong point. And then not only was it not my strong point, but we weren't in a lab group anymore. So you couldn't just be like, oh, can anybody give me a hand or anything? You had to be a lot more, you had to ask for questions a lot more, which I know I said you should be okay with, but still it's hard, obviously. Like you don't want to be like, how do you do this? So that was really, really challenging. But I just had to push through and put yourself out of your comfort zone. Ask for help when you need it. There are people there that will give it to you. and just keep going. I don't know, that's not very good advice, but like it will work out. And if it doesn't work out, like there's a reason that it didn't work out. You don't need to finish. You don't need to finish on time. You don't need to get your first job. Doesn't need to be your dream job. You can just go with what you want. And then also like you don't. So I was teaching workout classes, which gave me quite a bit of freedom financially. And so I was able to take a little bit more time for my master's, which was really nice. And then coming out, I had that like a job security. Like I was teaching like 1 hour a week, but it was still like a purpose. Like it had something I was doing every week. And that really helped me structure everything, especially during COVID when like, who knows what day of the week it is. So it was really nice to be able to still tap into that. And still, I was going to the studio and teaching online, which pros and cons, but it was still a schedule. That's not really helpful for adversity though. I would say just keep going and it's going to be okay. And you don't have to be perfect all the time and ask questions.
I like that answer. And I would argue on the last bit that you said there that it actually probably is good for adversity.
Mm-hmm.
And I would kind of ask you, since, you've maintained that workout schedule and teaching and stuff like that, is what impact does maintaining your physical health have on your mental health and academia? Can you draw maybe a connection there? Because I know there's lots of people that say like, that's the last thing I'll drop out of my day is exercising. So, do you experience that benefit as well?
Tyler and I would say that, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I have dropped out the exercising quite a bit. Like I'm not exercising as much as I was, and I hate that, but I'm also trying to kind of shift what a workout is. Like I just went for a 30-minute walk. Like that counts as exercise. You're still moving, you're still working. And so just trying to shift my mindset. Like you don't need to be in the gym lifting weights. So you don't need to be in the studio. I do bar classes, which is kind of like Pilates and ballet, and yoga.
Those are so hard. I did one time.
The bar class?
Those are difficult. Yes. Yeah. Extremely difficult.
They're so fun. But it's been so huge for my mental health. Like I had such an amazing master's experience. And I think that was because I was really quite grounded because of those workout classes. So I was really intentional about taking that time. Like even if I didn't want to go, I would go because I knew after I moved. And then there's like, literally they make you take 3 deep breaths. And that was like all I needed to completely to silence everything. And then I was able to go back and work more after, because then you've relaxed and you've breathed and you've moved. And so it's been absolutely huge. And looking back on my undergraduate degree, I was a little bit like when I started, so I danced a ton when I was in high school. I was worried about working out when I stopped dancing. So I was really good about it my first few years. And then I started to lose interest. And looking back at my mental health, I would say I probably didn't know at the time that was what was wrong, but that definitely affected my mental health as well as my grades, because it wasn't, everything just needs to quiet. And I find that working out really helps with that. And so it doesn't have to be lifting weights. It doesn't have to be something hard. It just needs to be your way of breathing and moving and taking a break, I guess.
Yeah. And I can totally attest to this too. I think I heard a quote a little bit while back. It was like, you're never going to regret doing a workout, basically. And whenever you're
absolutely
done getting and also what you're mentioning now about a walk, I also agree with that too. Because beforehand in my mind, say like pre-pandemic, I'd just be like, no, I'm not going to count a walk as like going out and getting exercise. Yeah. Whereas now, anytime I just go out for a 20-minute walk, like say I have something I'm like, can't solve at work, go out for a 20 or 30-minute walk, come back, my mind is so clear, and you just have the ability to kind of like dig in and get at that problem at that point in time. I want to, there's actually quite a bit of stuff that I want to touch on, or not quite a bit, but I'll find one topic. I'm quite curious. I like the portion where you're saying kind of this like engineer's attitude of, say, like engineers are sort of taught to be like right or superior to some extent.
Yeah.
I think even in and I think Tyler, you and I have talked about this a little bit too. is like having the humility to ask questions and like basically raise your hand in a situation where you actually like you don't know. I think is actually really powerful, and nobody's ever really going to look down on you because you don't know, because in the end you always have that opportunity to then like teach the next person that's coming up as well, like this particular thing. The question that I'm kind of curious on now that we're say like in a pretty predominant like teleworking and telelearning environments, like how can we successfully ask questions or like successfully get help from say like our mentors or people that we're working with?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would also say if you don't ask the question and you pretend like you know and you don't, it gets a lot worse. And so that was kind of my mindset. Like if I'm going to pretend like I know what I'm talking about and I'm not, like just ask the question. But for sure in the tele world, it's a lot harder. At where I work, we're on video calls, like I'd say 50% of the day. So I just try to ask. And one of the things that I try to do, I worked with a lot of people where English was their second language. And I would kind of I would pick up that they weren't asking the question in the right way. Like had been working before, so I kind of knew what their question was. I still try to step in and I try to ask that question for them. A lot of that is because I am curious and I do love to learn, even if it doesn't have anything to do with me. And a lot of that is because I feel like sometimes people don't have the confidence to ask the question, and I do. And so why wouldn't I just help them out if I can? And so I still try to do that now, or if I'm curious about something, I'll just ask, even if it's a project I'm not working on, because, they always say if you have the question, probably somebody else does too. But I find it so hard to ask questions like over text or over email. I'm like, what if I'm not wording this right? What if it's not going to be perceived well? And I don't know why I have that. Like, it's the same thing. It's the same person. I find it a lot harder to do it over email. So I would say either ask for a quick call. Lots of times it's easier to answer a question that way as well. Or just type it and walk away and then send it later, or send it and then walk away and just be like, you know what, it's going to be okay, because that they don't care, but you also are just like, what if I said the wrong thing? Yeah, I don't know. That's a really good question. Just do it, I'd say. Nike.
Just do it. Exactly. I think, and you know what too, like that's one thing I thought about and realized afterwards. I remember when I was a co-op student, I'd like triple or quadruple check my emails for like proofreads. And then now I'm like, whatever. And like, I even go and I look back afterwards, like emails to my director, I have like things like no grammar, like misspelled, but like, as long as you do your work fine at the end of the day, exactly. Nobody cares. I have another question that I'm curious on, because I think it was you talked about it a little while ago, and I bet you a lot of young professionals either struggle with it or they're in the process of learning how to do it. And that is informational interviews. So I want to ask you a little bit about this process of like, how did you learn how to do informational interviews? And then also, how did you do your outreach? Like, how did you connect with the people? And then I'm kind of curious, like we can touch on that. And then maybe afterwards I'll also ask you like, how was the outcomes? But maybe you can just start us off a little bit with like your initial learnings and then like your initial outreaches.
For sure. Okay. So I was so afraid to do it because I felt like it was sleazy, which it's not. And so I met with somebody who likes to help young professionals out at the beginning of their career and find out what they want to do. And she said, like, she was a family friend, and she said, I'm not going to tell your parents, like, if you want to tell me that you want to leave and go sew clothes for a living or something, like, that's fine. I won't tell them. Which in my case, it was fine. I wasn't doing that, and I am very close with my parents, so it was okay. But she basically told me what to say in an email to ask for an informational interview. And then all of a sudden I was absolutely fine. She also gave me a list of some potential questions to ask. And so once I had that, I actually never really asked those questions, but it was somewhere for me to start. And so that was just so eye-opening. So what she said to say in the email was, I'm interested in what you're doing. Would you be willing to have a 20 or 30-minute chat with me so I could learn more? Which is like the most basic email ever. But as soon as somebody told me those words, I was like, okay, I can do this. I was a little bit concerned about the Zoom type of situation, but she just said, just say, I'll send out a Zoom link. Let me know when you're available. And so that turned out to be fine. And then as for the questions, I tried to prepare. So I'd start the interview by telling them kind of where I was, and which was just graduated, really interested in data, trying to figure out what I like and pay attention to what I like. So I would love to hear what you've done. And so then they'd tell me about kind of their career. They were like, it was mostly quite young people. So like probably like 26, 27. So not super far in their career, but far enough. So I had 2 contacts from just, again, family, friends. And then from there, at the end of the interview, Jana mentioned that I should always ask if they know somebody I can talk to. And I think only one person didn't. And so then from there, they were like, okay, we'll connect you with blank. And so then you just meet so many crazy people, not crazy, cool people.
Hopefully not actually crazy. But
not actually crazy, crazy cool, let's say. And so, yeah. And then the other really important thing is to follow up. And so after the meeting, saying thank you for meeting with me. And then also the really key thing is after, when I actually got a job, is I went through and I wrote personalized emails to everyone that I met with. And I said, thank you for introducing me to whatever. I found this amazing job, and I would like to thank you for what you've done. And I heard back from most of them, and they all really appreciated that I took the time to do that, because they did take their time. They did help me. And so that was a really key component in my mind.
Yeah, I feel like you're like the model of like how informational interviews should be done, to be completely honest with you. Like,
I mean, I didn't come up with it.
But like, I mean, I think because when I was a student, like this was probably taught to me maybe in like my undergrad, midway through my undergrad. And so like I reaped the rewards of this afterwards. Like every other opportunity I got, literally except for like my current job, was all pretty much done through like informational interviews. And then, you know, I think like the thing is that like we almost kind of can overthink like the outreach sometimes, right? Whereas I love how simple, short, and sweet your kind of message that you sent out was. Because I remember even like my personal, like what I did on my LinkedIn, like during my master's, because like I really didn't know what I wanted to do during my master's, and I just wanted to learn from other people. And I had a really similar approach to you, Kate. I just say that, I'd be like, hey, I think this industry is really interesting. I noticed that you're, you know, like a rising professional and whatnot. Like, would you just have 20 or 30 minutes to meet for a coffee? Because back in those days, I could actually meet people for a coffee. We didn't have to do the Zoom links anymore. And I also really enjoy your personal touch, like at the end of going and thanking these people, because I think, you know, in the whole scheme of things, like I know for sure for you now, you're probably going to do that exact same thing. Like you'll help that person that's going to be rising, you know, in a couple, you know, whenever that is, right? And also I think it's a great thing for the people that did spend the time with you, is like they know it's helpful and it's useful, and like it's probably just going to create this like bigger and larger bubble of people who are going to like connect and share information within their network. So I think it's really powerful. Okay, and then I guess, yeah, like what would be kind of the end outcome, say, or not end outcome, like how would you recommend for people to kind of like overcome any adversity or like hesitation they have on either like the initial outreach, or maybe if they're kind of feeling not so confident about like what they should ask during the informational interviews? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I did struggle with that a little bit. Like I was always worried, but about if I was going to have enough questions. I did only book half an hour for each meeting, which is quite short. And so you really only need like 2 or 3 questions. And generally, I didn't even ask the questions that I had written down. But like just come up with some super basic question. Because the questions I asked usually were based off of what they had told me or about their career. And I had specific questions about those. But coming up with the questions is challenging, but ultimately what I was going for was I wanted to know how they got to where they were. I was told that that's a super interesting question to ask, because you like what they're doing now, obviously, because you're meeting with them, but you don't know how they got there, and maybe that there's something in the middle that triggers. You're like, oh, actually, that's what I need to do. That's where I need to go next. So that was an interesting question that takes up a lot of time as well. So if you're worried about how many questions to prepare, and then ask them about, I always threw in, what's your favorite part about your job? Like if it was like kind of an awkward conversation that wasn't flowing, that usually gets it going a little bit more. Or asking about the industry and how they chose the industry that they're in. And then the other really key question is, what do you do day to day? Because I honestly still don't really know what mechanical engineers do, or engineers really in general. And so asking people like day to day, what do you do, is like such an interesting question. And then there obviously you can come up with so many questions when they tell you like, oh, what does that mean, kind of thing. So my advice would be super basic questions, unless you have done your research and you have specific questions. But also don't feel like you need to hit every single one that you've written down. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way, and that's okay.
I find a lot of times if you're preparing for something, just knowing that you have something written down like helps a lot, and eases that anxiety in the back of your mind. And then you don't have to ask any of those questions, but it just makes it that much easier knowing that you've prepared. And, I think that it's also interesting that everybody has this really unique and interesting story that they want to tell and they want to give you answers to. So I mean, you shouldn't be scared to ask people, because people want to be asked this, and people want to like share their story in hopes that it'll kind of help somebody else. So I would say there's no reason not to do something like this, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree.
Yeah. Tyler, as they say, it's like what people love to talk about themselves or something like that, I've heard.
That's what I think I told Dave this a while ago. I told him just like, everybody's favorite subject is themselves. So it's like people not that maybe that's not entirely true, but people do not, their story is what they know the best. They know it well, and they know it better than anybody else. So people enjoy sharing that, the challenges, the struggles, the key turning points. And so that can help a lot. And I also want to touch on, I really like how you sent the personalized email to each person after. That helps a lot too. I had somebody tell me at one point, he said, and this is only like a few years ago when there's like email and everything, he's like, if you ever really want to impress somebody, send them a letter.
Yeah.
I was like, what? And he's just like,
oh, yeah.
He's like, I've done this a few times, and he's just like, it's honestly the best investment he's ever made is like handwrite them or type it and sign it and like send it in the mail, a letter. Like nobody does that anymore. So if you really want to stand out, like you can do something like that too, it makes somebody feel appreciated. So I think that was a really nice touch that you had there.
I didn't handwrite any letters.
But still, just the intent.
Initiative was great.
But I should have.
Letter. Yeah.
The initiative was great. Yeah.
I was just in this, I was taking a course, it was called the ADAPT program, which is super interesting. It's to bridge the gap between school and work. So I had done some co-op positions, so it wasn't as useful for me as I think it would have been for people who are just coming like straight out of school. It was advanced digital and professional training, I think. And so there, a big chunk of it was about how to network. And they mentioned that in about 3 different courses, to write handwritten letters, that it really changes things. I was too afraid to do it. Maybe next time.
I mean, honestly, like even on the the next time, even on the email side, it's still brilliant, right? I mean, it's just that little extra personal touch is going to help people, feel appreciative, and also they'll definitely remember you too. And, I'm just going to throw one more fun fact is I know people who've done this before. Actually, somebody else, Tyler and I have talked with my friend Jeff. I remember he would hand mail applications to companies, and like he also like went in and hand delivered things. Like it got him so many interviews just because they're like, wow, you're like really actually taking the initiative here.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kate, just Tyler and I really want to thank you for taking the time and coming on and talking with us. Honestly, I probably have like a lot more questions I could ask you about like your learning journey, but yeah, I just really wanted to thank you for coming on. I think people are really going to appreciate a lot of the wisdom that you shared with us.
Yeah, thank you. This was fun.
Yeah, thank you. I'll second what Dave said. I think there's a lot more to get into. There's a lot of tangents me and Dave wanted to go on, but so we'll definitely have to have you on for part 2 at some point. But thank you very much for coming on and sharing your story, and I think people will get a lot of benefit that listen to this.
Yeah, thanks. It was so nice to meet you guys.
Today's episode, we had Kate. Really enjoyed her take and insight into some of the steps that she took in becoming a data scientist. I also really think, especially for young professionals, the informational interview piece is really important. You'd be surprised the amount of opportunities that you can get by just reaching out to people, and you don't even have to overthink it. All you have to do is just reach out with something simple, and you'd be surprised how many people are going to get back to you. So yeah, I think Kate's journey is really unique, and we're really looking forward to catching up with her at some point in the future to see how her first couple of years in her job are going.
Yeah, no, I was really interested in the way too that like her career progressed, or her undergrad progressed, and then she figured out that data science was actually a field she didn't even know it was a thing, and now that's what she's doing for her career, and it's really rewarding for her because she's able to apply it to industries that she cares about. And Also, the bit that she talked about on mentorship as well, how important that is, what she gained from volunteering, what she got from mentorship. She realizes that it's more and more important, which is, I think, something that, you and I talk about a lot too, and people realize, whoever's done it, thinks that it's really important. But, yeah, we hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for listening. If you want to stay up to date on all of the new content and other interviews that we've done with other people, you can find us on Twitter and our YouTube channel, TrailBlazers Pod. And then we also are on Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast. So you can keep up to date, subscribe, follow on any of those things. And we'll catch you guys next time.